Okay, we're gonna start recording. So last week we talked like a crap ton of relationships, right? How fun was that? I had a lot of fun last week. Mike, even this morning, he's like, tell the girls I said hello. I was like, okay, dude. Like, they're not your girls, they're my girls, all right? He was just joking, but it was just funny because he's like, I feel like I know them so much after the whole weekend. He's like, I don't know what happened this weekend. I guess just like being in front of you guys several times. Like, he's like, I just like got to know them like super quick. And I talked about you guys all the time. So I don't know if you guys know that. Like, he like literally knows you guys. Certain people for certain things. Like, I'll be like, oh, this is a girl that lost a lot of weight during blah, 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 blah. You know, like, that's how I like, he references you guys. Maybe he's like, oh, she's the one with the 2 kids that do this. Like, it's like, I try to like give reference points for him. So he really does like know you guys. He hears about you guys all the time. I talk about you guys all the time. I'll be like, oh, guess what so-and-so did, da-da-da-da-da. You know, I'm like, oh, so-and-so signed up for first coach and just hit Emerald and she's on this team. And it's cool. And I like to share it with him. He likes to hear about it. It's just kind of our way of like staying connected in each other's businesses, I guess. But he really enjoyed you guys. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time last week to even kind of talk with him or listen to him as well. And I know last week was a big week. Like, we talked a lot about relationships. I know it even kind of got, I don't know if it was for you guys, it got in my head a little bit. Like, almost the point where I was like, oh my God, we gotta like cut out this like relationship talk. I'm getting a little crazy here. I was like, I just need like a break from it because I think when you're trying to fix too many things in a rush, or like when you're like in the thick of things, sometimes you have to kind of take a step back too and be like, all right, like, I know that we have some work to do and maybe some areas that maybe we talked about, but let's take our time in like fixing them, right? Like, sometimes you guys, I think we just get so like used to like wanting to just like snap our fingers and fix things, but we need to remind ourselves that it takes time, right? So like, maybe there's an area in your relationship or in your life or whatever that needs some tweaking, right? You're like, I've been exposed now that something needs fixed, but it's going to take time. Okay. It's going to take time to actually work through that, especially if you're the one doing it and maybe your partner knows nothing about it, right? Maybe they know nothing about all the stuff that you just learned about last week. So you're coming to them like, oh my God, I'm just like so awakened by all of this stuff. And they're like, what are you talking about? You know, they don't know. And so it can be like this disconnect there for a little bit until you can get to the point where you can explain it to them or share it with them. Hang on 1 second. What's that? Can you do it at the end? Let you know when you can do it. You can't do it right now.
I do it right now. Like, I'll do it a little bit, and I'll do it for the girls, and I'll do it for you after the meeting.
After the meeting? Okay.
No, I'm gonna do it right now, and for you after the meeting, for you down to me, and we'll dance.
We'll dance? Okay, how about we just do it after the meeting and we will dance?
You do it now?
No, because I'm talking to the girls now.
What about
Hey.
a sign?
Did you finish your breakfast?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know. He wants to play a song for you guys, but it's Marshmallow.
He's a marshmallow.
I don't know much about him. He was just explaining him to me on the way home from yesterday. I had to ask him if he was a good guy or a bad guy. He's like, I guess he's a good guy, so we got that much. This is it?
Uh-huh.
Do you like this?
Uh-huh.
What's he doing? Why does he have that marshmallow on his head?
Oh, that's his head.
That's his head?
That's
Okay.
the marshmallow.
Wow, that sounds fun. Okay, we got to do our meeting, okay? Okay, go ahead. Oh, can you turn that on? Can you pause it? Let's save it. Let's save it for the end.
Okay.
Okay, we are finale. Okay?
Deep.
Go, 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 go. All right. I'm sure you guys are like, okay. Go, go, go. Watch out, man. Watch out. Go. All right. Sorry, ladies. Or not sorry. I mean, like, you know, I got a child. It happens. So, is he Tessa? Okay, that actually makes me kind of feel a little bit better. Because I know that you probably wouldn't. Like, I didn't know. I just found out about him, and I was like, and we went through this whole like bendy thing where he like was scared of him. And I'm like, then why are you watching him? I'm like, who is he? So I had to figure out who he was. And then come to find out he's like a bad guy, and he has like all these like weird videos. So now I have to kind of check the characters that he's like getting into, And so recently he just told me about Marshmallow, and I was like, if this is another bendy situation, I just can't do it. I was like, we just got him kind of like out of our way, and here we are coming to the next one. But come to find out, I guess Marshmallow is like a good guy. He just plays, he's like a DJ, is that right? Like a kid DJ? Is that
he's just a
kind of what I'm
DJ.
getting? Okay, cool. All right, well then I can deal with him. But I was like, that whole like bendy situation was just like, it was the worst. But he also found him when he was like 3. He found him like on, just flipping through YouTube, and then it was like, it kind of ruined him sleeping in his bed for a little bit. Like he was just scared of him, and I'm like, how do we get rid of him? But then his older cousin was like obsessed with him, which didn't help. So it was kind of a tricky situation. But he's a little bit older now, so I think he's good now. But yeah, I was like, oh my god, not again. He's on Fortnite. Okay, now I see why he wants to, because he's been begging me to get Fortnite, and I said he's not old enough. See, I just need to like reference you guys. I need you guys. That's kind of how I feel about it already. I love you guys. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about Fortnite either. I've told him no, he's not old enough yet. You guys let me know when I'm allowed to let Derek play that.
So Caleb plays it.
One, right?
Like Caleb played it, and then Jackson started playing it, and we got Jackson to Switch. So he's gonna be 7 in July. I hate Fortnite. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
I don't want to. I don't want to, because I know, like, yeah.
Jenny, can I just say I had a student ask me if I let my kids watch Fortnite on like YouTube and stuff like that. And I said no. And he goes, well, you're a good mom. So I think continue to do what it is that you're doing. So, I mean, this came from a 4th grader. So.
Yeah.
My son.
I can feel that. Like, oh, yeah, go ahead.
Gatlin plays Fortnite every single day. I have to force him to go outside, and he gets mad at me. But what he likes to do, I mean, he is so smart that he apologizes to kids on Fortnite because they get mad at him because he's so good. So, like, it's his thing that he's good at, but, like, we've had to ground him a couple times from it because, people get on there and anybody can get on there and talk to him. So you have people on there that are saying bad things, so he thinks he can say bad things. But, I mean, he has an iPad too. So 2 years ago on his iPad, I caught him watching porn. And that was 2 years ago. But he doesn't know. He didn't know. I mean, he's a kid. He knew it was bad. But, like, I just think you just need to monitor it. I mean, if you do allow it, you just need to monitor it.
For sure, because Jackson gets on there and, like she said, anybody can come in like their room or whatever, and you can add certain friends and play with friends, but like anybody can come into their game and play, and I'll hear him yelling and screaming and crying, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? He's like, this kid, they're killing me. So like a couple weeks ago, he was in a room and there was like older kids, and they figured out he was younger than them. So like 4 of them got in there, and they were like going against him, trying to kill him so they could like take all of his stuff. And they were telling him like he was retarded and like stupid and all sorts of stuff. So he gave me his headset. So like he's playing and I'm listening to what they're saying, and I'm just listening and I'm listening and I'm listening. And like they were trying to just get him to leave, and he wouldn't leave. And then finally, like he just exited like out of the game. He like shut the game down. And the kid said something to him about being retarded and he should just go kill himself. And I said, maybe you're the retarded one. And they realized like I was a mom that was on there, and they like went silent. and didn't say anything. And I'm like, yeah, you kids better check yourselves. You better check yourself. So don't start it.
Dude, that was like crazy. Yeah, I'm really glad I said no all this time then, because he's been begging me for a while, because his older, he has an older cousin. My sister's son, Joshy, is 10. And Derek's only 5. So like there's a 5-year gap there, but he always wants to do what Joshy does. And I'm like, dude, you gotta remember, Joshy's older than you. And my sister was like the gamer in my life anyway. Like her and my brother were gamers, so like they're kind of already familiar with that kind of like stuff. I'm not so much. So like when he started asking me, I was like, I don't know. I was like, I feel like you're not ready for that. And now talking to you guys, I'm actually really glad I said that, because I told him he had to wait till he was 13. He said that he can't wait till he's 13. I was like, yeah, dude, you're gonna have to wait that long. Because that's what it has on the, I think that's what it has on the front cover, is like 13 or something like that, or whatever the thing is like they have to be 13. So I was like, you can do it when you're 13. We'll see. Oh goodness, I'm not ready for that. All right, let me shift gears back to what we were talking about though. So last week, relationships was a lot, right? Like we delved in, we dug around to some fun stuff. Hopefully you guys, of course, always take that with a grain of salt. Yeah, you can have some. Love you. Be patient, okay, with yourself and with your partner when it comes to relationships, okay? So just remember that as we're coming off of last week. I just wanted to like recap on that just, it can be a lot, you know, to your own head and to maybe your partner's head who didn't hear any of it, okay? Just remember that sometimes that what you're working on, only you know about. You know, and sometimes we just get such in a hurry and we get so excited and we just want to like word vomit it all to our partner, or we just want to like fix everything right now because now we know the answer and now we know what's wrong and we just want to fix it. And sometimes, you guys, it's just going to take time. Okay. So be patient with yourself, with your relationship, with your partner. Okay. Like even yesterday when we got home from West Palm Beach, Mike and I, we got in our house, it was 80 degrees in our house. Our air conditioner vent had like fallen open. So it was 80 degrees. We had just drove 3.5 hours. We were hungry. We were just done with the weekend. We just brought everything in, threw it in the house. And then we started like arguing and like fighting. And then we were just like, why are we arguing? And I was like, it's so hot in here. And he's like, I'm so hungry. And I was just like we were just tearing each other apart for no reason because of our circumstances, right? Because of our situation, because of our like external situation. We were just done. We were exhausted. We were hungry. We were fucking hot. The dog's hair was everywhere because they'd been in the house for several days and we didn't get to, we usually sweep and stuff. So it was just like everything in the house when we came home was just like, oh my God. But I had to remind myself, right? Like I still love Mike. We're not gonna break up because of some fight that we had yesterday. But I want you guys to know we still argue. Mike and I still argue. Mike and I still have issues. Sometimes just emotions are high, situations are bad, and we still like argue. And then I was just like, I'm sorry, I just need food and like a cold shower. You know, I just like took a second to breathe. We stepped away. We just started unpacking, kind of like, let's take a second and let's like, we're going to be fine, you know what I mean? But just know, you guys, that stuff's going to happen, right? That stuff's going to come in and out. And I just want you guys to know that like, I'm not perfect. My relationship is not perfect. Even though I can talk for a week about relationships, I still have things in my own relationship that I want to fix and work on. Okay. I guess I just, honestly, I told Mike, I was like, I'm so in fear of talking about relationships because I don't ever want to feel like I'm preaching something that I'm not trying to learn myself. So like when I look at like Rachel and Dave, which is what I want to kind of get into because we have a video that I want to watch. Like when I'm thinking of Rachel and Dave, I'm like, I just feel like they just were trying to pretend they were perfect, and they started giving advice, and they liked that people thought that they looked perfect. Right? They actually probably really enjoyed that. Like, ooh, people envy us. Ooh, people are asking us what to do. Ooh, let's continue doing that. And then they fed into it, right? And then they fed into it, and then they started making money on it. And then they started really getting people that started following them because of the type of couple that they were portrayed to be, right? And what happened? Then they realized, wow, this really isn't us. We're actually living a complete lie. Right? And so I just told Mike, I was like, I'm so in fear of talking about relationships because I don't ever want to pretend that I know it all. I don't ever want to pretend that we're perfect. I don't ever want to pretend that we have it all together and we can just tell everybody else how to live their lives and then pretending we, you know what I mean, don't argue or don't fight or don't disagree. So I just want you guys to know, I promise never to be Rachel and Dave in a way that like, I never want to tell you guys what to do or pretend that I'm perfect or pretend that Mike and I are perfect and that I'm just sitting here from a pedestal telling you guys how to live your lives. I'm learning too, okay? Mike and I work on our relationships just like you guys are out there working on your own. Okay, so I just always want to like say that. Maybe it's like a disclaimer on the bottom of like last week, like I am not in a perfect relationship. Mike and I argue all the time and we promise that we will never try to be perfect. Like, I just want to make sure you guys know that. Like last week, it got in my head too. Like all the relationship talk, I was like mulling over all this relationship talk in my head all week. And I was like, you just need a break from that for a second, right? Like, because it can make you overanalyze so many different things in your relationship or your life. And I was like, whoo, I need to step away from that for a second. There's a lot to be, you know, process that we talked about last week. And I just want us to all know that it's going to take time to initiate, right? It's going to take time to work into our lives. It's going to take time to work into our relationships. It's going to be worth it, right? It's always going to be worth it to continue working on our relationships. But I just want us to always remember we're not a final product, okay? Your relationship and yourself, you are never a final product. There's always more to be learned. And so that's what I really love about Warrior Hour is that I don't really have to, I can lead, but I don't have to pretend that I know everything, right? I'm like, oh, wow, I'm like learning right along with you guys. And I love that aspect. And I always want to share that with you guys and remind you that I'm learning right with you. Yes, I'm leading, but I'm learning with you. Okay. I'm not sitting up here saying, oh, you guys should do this. You guys should be doing this because it's perfect. And it's what I do. You know, I'm just like, oh, we probably need to be doing that. Like once we learn something, you know, I'm like right in there with you guys learning as well. So I appreciate all the work that we did last week. And I really thank you guys a lot. I think that we did a lot of really good work. And I think a lot of us learned a lot last week. So just kind of recapping and pulling that all together. So let's lean into what we got going on this week. So I got a notification that Rachel Hollis is back in the game. I can't guarantee that we will be hearing from Rachel or Dave, but she did open up her 90-day challenge back up. And so we have week 11 here. I have it pulled up. I'm gonna screen share here. All right. So, I'm not gonna lie, you guys, I'm a little nervous to do this with you guys. Just the topic in general, I'm like, ooh, buddy, what are we getting ourselves into, you know? So it's Racism 101. That's the topic for week 11. Before we get into this, I want everyone to know, I have not watched this. I have no idea what's about to come up. If some motions get arise during this, we're going to take everything with a grain of salt. We are going to process everything given to us. We will discuss it and we'll go from there. Okay? If at any moment you are uncomfortable too much, anything, feel free to jump off. I wish you won't. okay? Because I think that we probably need to work through this, and I think that we're ready for this. But it can be a little intimidating, and I just want to be upfront and honest and tell you guys that I'm a little intimidated about talking about this after this, right? After we watch this video, I'm like, all right, what are we getting ourselves into this week? But we'll just have to see, and we'll just see where it takes us, and yeah, let's just do it. All right, so I'm gonna press play, and let's see what we got going on over here.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Britt Barron, and all my friends call me Beans. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, did I pause it or play? That would be paused.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Britt Barron, and all my friends call me Beans. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk to you all a little bit about what's going on right now. So you probably are aware, either you've seen it on your social media feed or in the news, or you've seen it in your neighborhoods or had conversations with friends and family. But right now, our country is in the middle of a very big, very important, very necessary conversation about race. This conversation, this movement, this energy has been sparked by a lot of things that have happened in history, but most recently, with the killing of George Floyd, really was a spark that lit a flame that can now be seen from all of our homes. This is an inescapable conversation. And so how do we equip ourselves to have it well? For some of you watching this, this may be your first introduction to a conversation like this. This may be the first time you're hearing some of these terms or asking yourself what this might mean for you, for your family, for your business. And so I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation and give you some tools and resources to better understand your role and how you engage. So to understand how we got to where we are today, we need to understand a little bit of our historical context about what race has meant and then continues to mean in our country. The way I like to describe this is like a river. So if you think about a river and you imagine yourself sitting next to this serene river, water is rushing against the rocks, there's wind blowing in the trees, you're sitting there and it's this beautiful scene. And then now I want you to think about that same river, that same scene, the same rocks and the trees, only now that river is full of trash. So you have a few options, right? Your first instinct might be to jump in the river and grab as much trash as you can. Or realizing that that will only lead to more trash coming from upstream, maybe let's take a walk upstream and see how the trash is getting in the river in the first place. And so you're looking around and seeing protests and marches and campaigns and hashtags and wondering how we got here. Let's go upstream. And let's think about the historical context of what race has meant in our country. We don't have enough time to do this right now in this video in depth in the way that I know it should be done. But I would just like to encourage you to think from 1492, which isn't the beginning of our country, but it's the beginning of our country as we know it. That was the beginning of our country being colonized. That's when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? And that started on this journey of European colonization, that started on this journey of enslaved Africans, that started on this journey of then Jim Crow laws and the civil rights movement. And now we find ourselves here. And if we're not able to connect all those dots, it's really hard to have a conversation about what to do in 2020. But when we have that historical context, something becomes very clear. And the thing that becomes clear is what sociologist Beverly Tatum describes as a moving sidewalk. And she says it like this. She says that when you are born into this country or raised in this country, you are put onto a moving sidewalk of racism. And unless you are walking faster than that sidewalk in the opposite direction, it is moving you. So what does that mean? That means that there is no neutral. There is no neutral in racism in America. And if this is shocking to you, or you feel triggered by this, or you're not sure what that means, I would encourage you to do work on that timeline and understanding historical context of how we got here, how the sidewalk started moving, the sidewalk that now we are all on, and in real time we are watching as our country says, I think this is the wrong sidewalk, I don't want to be on it anymore. One of the things that has come out of our historical context, one of the things that keeps that sidewalk moving is a very simple idea. And that idea is held up by policies and structures. That idea is held up by some things that have happened in history. That idea is held up in very subtle ways, but the simple idea is this. The idea is that white is normal. That white is normal and anything else is other. So let's look at a few examples, right? This shows up in a lot of different ways in our culture. I'll give you one from my own life. So every time I go to Target, right, which is a great thing to do that I haven't been able to do in a while because of quarantine, but I go to Target and I'm looking for shampoo and conditioner. And there are 2 full aisles in the Target by my house of hair care. And all of the labels on the top of the aisles, they say hair care. Hair care, hair care, hair care, hair care, hair care. And then there's one section that says multicultural hair. That's where I find products for my hair. And what does that mean? That means that there's one type of normal hair, and then there's different hair that's other. And that seems super subtle, but let's keep talking about these examples. When I took tap in middle school, when I thought my tap dance career was going to get off the ground, and it never really did. But on the list of things that we needed when it came time for our end of the year recital was nude tights. So nude tights were apparently supposed to make it look like we weren't wearing tights at all, but those tights were made to fit someone else's skin tone. Right? They were meant to fit a normal skin tone. So everything else, putting on those tights was a physical reminder that something is different about me. And for something to be different about me, that means something else has to be normal. I'll give you one more example. When you're a kid and you have a box of crayons, there's one crayon in that box that is labeled flesh. And what color is that? What color is skin or flesh or nude, or what does normal hair look like? It's a lot of subtle ways, but our society repeats over and over this idea that white is normal and everything else is other. And so it may not seem like a big deal to you, like hair care, crayons, nude tights, but here's why it's a big deal. Because the minute that you begin to other someone, the last domino to fall is violence. The minute you begin to other someone, the last domino to fall is always violence. And so what begins with nude tights and crayons and Band-Aids and hair care ends with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and Trayvon Martin and George Floyd. When you are able to other someone, or someone is seen as different, you're able to start dehumanizing them in a way that is going to make their life matter less. And so while those might have felt like silly examples in the beginning, they are just a tip of an iceberg of the way in which we have normalized one type of person and othered a different type of person. And that's what I mean when I say we're on a moving sidewalk. And there's no neutral. Right now, you may be watching from home as protests go, or you may be wondering what to do or having these conversations. Well, I would encourage you to keep being engaged, because there is no neutral. You are on that sidewalk. And either we are walking faster in the opposite direction, working towards equity, working towards a world where there is no normal and other, there is only humanity. Either you are working towards that, or you are on that sidewalk and it is moving you. And you have to be actively engaged in this work, and that is going to take you being connected to a personal idea, being connected to a why, being connected in some way to the reality that this is not the world that you want to live in. You do not want to live in a world where some people matter more than others. You do not want to live in a world where simple acts that you engage in every day contribute to a narrative that someone is less than, someone is other, someone is different, and you are normal. I want to tell you a story about the reason why this work is so deeply personal to me. And this is the reason that I keep going when it's hard. This is the reason I keep doing this work, even when it's not popular and when it's not in the news cycle. Because that is what we're all going to have to do. We're going to have to be committed to this work and committed to it when it's not popular and when it stops being in front of our face on social media. This was years ago when I was able to go on a civil rights tour in the South. And I was in Memphis, Tennessee. And I was learning so much about the last days and the last work that Martin Luther King Jr. was able to be a part of before he was assassinated. He was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, and the night before his assassination, he gave a speech at a church, and I was able to go into that church and listen to that speech. And he is one of the most brilliant leaders and one of the most talented orators and one of the most creative thinkers that our country and this world has ever seen. And I got to sit in that church and listen to him give a speech that said, "I've seen the mountaintop and I may not get there with you," because he knew that what he was doing and how he had committed himself to this work wasn't going to make his life last very long. He was seen as such a major threat. And he was assassinated that next morning and at a place called Lorraine Motel. And the Lorraine Motel has now been turned into the National Civil Rights Museum. And so we went to the museum and we learned so much about him and Stokely Carmichael and Bayard Rustin and Fannie Lou Hamer and Julian Bond and all of these people who made this movement possible. Leaders after leaders after leaders that I had never heard about. And I'm realizing all the amazing things that they have done. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. included. And we get to the end of the museum and I have this thought, I have this realization. And I have this question that starts haunting me and is a question that fuels my work. What might these leaders have created in our world if they did not have to spend all of their time, energy, creativity, and resources on defending the fact that they were human? What might we have in our country if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did not have to devote the entirety of his work just trying to get white people to see that black people were equal? What might we have in our country if leaders like Medgar Evers got to do whatever it is that they wanted to do and did not feel confined, that their work and their energy, their leadership, their talent, their skills had to go to just simply saying, "I'm a human being"? Our country would be much better off if we got the voice and the action of these leaders in our business and in our education system and in all of the areas that impact our everyday lives. And we sit here years later in 2020 watching as some of the best leaders and orators and creators are once again using that platform to say, Black people matter, Black lives matter, these people are human just like us, there is no normal and there is no other. And that is incredibly hopeful to me. And I'm incredibly grateful for all the work that they have done, the work that I get to do, and to see these people stand up now. But I have to ask myself, the question that haunts me to fuel this work is I hope that one day we don't have to ask that question anymore. That enough people get actively engaged in walking faster than this moving sidewalk in the opposite direction. And if enough people do that, then maybe these leaders and these creators and these innovators will get to put their hands and feet towards making this country better instead of defending their own existence. So maybe this conversation doesn't feel as personal to you yet, but I assure you that it is. Because we are all a part of this. We are all living in a country, in a system that has placed us on a moving sidewalk. And if you don't want to be on that sidewalk, if you don't want to be moved by it, then you have to start moving faster in the opposite direction. You have to be on a path towards anti-racism, or else that sidewalk is going to move you. And so I don't care if you've never had this conversation before, or if this is your 20th year in anti-racism work. Start somewhere and keep moving. Because we have an opportunity to create something radically different than the thing that was handed down to us. We have an opportunity to develop leaders and creators who get to freely express themselves instead of spending their time defending their own lives. What a beautiful country we would have if that is what we put our energy towards, so let's move that way. So I invite you, wherever you find yourself on this journey, I invite you to come and do this work with us. So if you're asking yourself where to start, then I have some resources for you. We created a guide called Understanding Racism 101. This is your entry point into this conversation. This is you saying, I do not want to be moved by that sidewalk anymore. This is you taking a stand to better understand and experience how we got here and what your role in moving forward is. So join us in this journey, join us in this work, because we need you to be a part of the change that we're all looking for.
Woo, buddy. All right. Okay. So first of all, my heart's pumping. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be super transparent with you guys right now. My heart is pounding a little bit, thinking of talking about this topic. Okay. And leading this topic. I'm a little nervous, so just bear with me, okay, guys? Couple things. I know this is a hard topic for a lot of us, okay? But as she's saying, if you are not moving actively in the opposite direction, you are naturally be taking in a direction that we have been going for a long time. I'm going to recommend something to you guys right now to watch. If you guys have Netflix, I just watched this actually yesterday. It was kind of interesting that this topic came up today on Rachel, because I just watched, I think it's the 13th. It's a documentary on Netflix. It will explain how systematic racism has developed, okay? It is not something we can deny, okay? We need to understand that. It is not something we can say it does not exist, okay? Just know that. Accept that in this moment, okay? It is not something we can deny. It is something that has been going on for years, and little by little, we have made it huge, okay? It started out here, and then it was this law passed, which allowed this law, which allowed this law. And then, you guys, it was really a lot of war on crime was the initial aspect of it all. And where it really came from was the war on crime. They wanted to break down on crime. But what they started to do was create laws that made the crimes that the Black communities were doing harsher, okay? So listen, you guys know, okay, we always talk, how many, the percentage of kids, of Black kids that are being raised without their fathers, okay? That's a huge statistic that we always know, right? Oh my God, there's so many Black kids without their fathers because they're in jail, right? And we think, oh, those shitty fathers, why are they in jail? You guys, they're in jail because of our systematic racism, okay? Black kids are being raised without fathers because those fathers were placed in jail for something that older white men didn't want to see them anymore, okay? You have to watch this documentary. I highly, highly, highly suggest watching this documentary and educating ourselves. Really understanding, like she said, it's like going upriver and viewing it from where it's beginning. Okay, so yeah, we can look at look at all this trash. Where did all this trash come from? you have to go upriver and understand where it's coming from. Okay. And that's going back to the 1950s or earlier, obviously, but when that civil rights movement really broke out, and then they were really trying, like the government and the, you know, the higher, like the Senate and Congress and all that, were really trying to continue to suppress the Black communities. And so they began to fight crime, right? Fight crime. But really all that was let's put Black people in jail. And then let's have them work for free, right? So you guys have to watch this documentary. It's called, I believe it's the 13th. I think that's what it's called. It's 13 something, either 13 or 13 something. You have to watch it on Netflix. It's gonna educate you guys so much. It educated me yesterday, okay? Like it literally, like, even though I knew, it put it into perspective so much different. And it gave me details to attach to the different timelines. So what happened in the 50s to what happened in the 60s to what happened in the 70s, and you watched it progress, right? So these people, you guys have to think, like my mom was born in 56. Like she knows segregation. So these people that were born maybe even a little bit before her or around her are now in office. So these people that were born and raised during this time period are now in office, and they know segregation. That's what they grew up with. Okay. And so now you have this boom of millennials, right, coming in, and we're about 30, 20, late 20s, 30s. We're getting a little bit older now, and we're like, hey, this isn't right anymore. Right? We're like, you can't do this anymore. Like I know, like my neighbors, you guys, my neighbors are a Black family, and they are the nicest people you would ever meet in your entire life. And I could never imagine something happening to them like I've seen in some other places. Right? Like, so we have to actively move in the opposite direction. Actively. Okay, not silently, not saying, oh, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. So even a year ago, even like 6 months ago, I never realized that racism had to do with me. I'm gonna be like total transparent for you guys. I remember, so in the movie that I watched yesterday, I was telling you guys about, there's a point where they start talking about Trayvon, which was the kid that had his hood up, that the off-duty like security guard guy like followed him and thought that he was doing something wrong. They wrestled, he ended up shooting him, but then he ended up getting off. Okay, so that was kind of one of the main sparks of the protests and a lot of violence that happened around then. I remember when that happened, and I remember thinking in my mind, wow, I feel really bad for them. I was like, oh man, that really sucks for them. Like I didn't realize it had anything to do with me because I wasn't Black, right? So initially in my mind, I was like, man, I feel really bad for them, but whew, thank God that's over there and it has nothing to do with me. I'm just being totally transparent with you guys. I never realized it had anything to do with me. Okay. Recently, it has been exposed and has come to knowledge that without people like us, even if I have to say it, white women speaking up against something that has nothing to do with us, right? That's the only way change is going to happen. For them, for all of us, okay? That's the only way it's going to happen. It's not their problem. It's all of our problem. We're all included in this, right? Not all lives matter. Dude, when Black lives matter in a community, then all lives will matter, okay? But the saying is Black lives matter because right now, they don't feel like they do. And so when somebody says to me, oh, all lives matter, and I'm like, yeah, but I've never had to question whether my life matters, right? I was born knowing I deserve justice. I have rights. I have opportunity. I'm in the land of the free. I've never had to question whether my life meant anything. They have. They've had to wonder if they got pulled over, if they could be shot like that because of what somebody thinks they look like. Okay? I've never had to question that. When I get pulled over, I'm like, damn, how am I gonna get out of this ticket? Not, oh my God, are they gonna think I'm gonna have a gun? Okay? That's the difference. That's the difference. I've never had to question whether my life mattered. They do. So the same is Black Lives Matter, because they really do deserve that. Okay? And I think when we kind of have to back up and understand where it came from, we have to go upstream and really figure out where it came from. And when you realize where it came from, you guys are going to be disgusted. You're going to be embarrassed. It's embarrassing. To me, after watching that documentary yesterday, I was embarrassed to be white. Hands down, not even lying to you guys. I was like, this is disgusting that we have allowed this, built this, created this, and suppressed an entire race and communities. Right? Like, oh, you can be Black, but in your little four corners. Right? Like, you can be over there. You guys, we did the same thing to the freaking Native Americans. Oh, you can be your Native Americans, but how about you go over there? Just stay over there, though. Actually, can I move you a little further? Yeah, back corner. There you go. Stay back there. And as long as you stay back there, you're fine in our community. It's just not allowed anymore. You guys, we can't do it anymore. Imagine, you guys, think of it as like a child, right? You talk crap to a child all day, eventually they're going to think they're crap. And then what are they going to start doing? They're going to start acting out verbally or abusively. They're going to start acting out, right? To me, the Black community is like a child right now, and not in a bad way. I'm talking about because we have uneducated them. We have placed them in systems that have kept them uneducated. Let's go into that for a second. You guys, your school systems are based off of your housing, based off of the residential. The taxes pay for the schooling in the residential. So if you have Black communities that we're keeping suppressed, then obviously their schools aren't going to be great as well, because they don't make a lot of money, so they don't have a lot of taxes. Okay? And so then their school systems are uneducated. They don't have the education rights. So then we're blaming uneducated people for acting like children when we haven't educated them correctly. Right? What if they had the equal opportunity to go to the nice school, or if all schools were treated equal? Then they had the education, and then they could rise up, and we actually believed in them and said, man, I think that you could do really great things in life, right? Like, think of like the what is that, the self-fulfilling prophecy, is that the word? I believe so. Like, when you continuously talk good things into a child, then they become a good person in society, because they believe, like, you say, oh, you're such a good kid. Oh, you're such a good kid. And then eventually they begin to fulfill that. Like, oh, I'm a good kid, so I need to stay being a good kid. Think of our Black community as the same. Okay? We believe in them. We have to speak to them like we want them to rise. Okay? I'm going to pop over to the comments for just a second, because I know that there's like lots of stuff going on over here and I want to read it, but I'm like jibber jabbing. Okay. Yeah, dude, like Native Americans, like we could totally go into that. Oh, oh, okay. Shower time. You're funny, dude. All right, give me just a couple more minutes, okay? So yes, like, dude, Carrie, I would love to learn more as well about like. No. Oh yeah, you can use this. I would love to learn more about that for sure, because I know that there's so much more that I could probably learn. Like, you guys, that's the thing, is like, once you open the doors to learning about like suppress communities, it exposes so much. And like I said, you guys, I'm almost half embarrassed to be white. I am like semi-embarrassed because we've allowed it to go on for so freaking long. And so I urge you guys, I know it's hard to be anti-racist. It feels like it's a hard one. It's a hard one to deal with, but that's the only way we're literally going to get past this. And if you're tired of hearing about it, the only way to stop hearing about it is to fix it, to get over it, to work through it, right? You can't lose the weight without doing the work. Let's put it into perspective like that. You can't just wake up the next day and boom, the weight is gone, right? You have to do the work. You have to sweat. You have to work. You have to figure it out. You have to build the muscle, take the supplements, eat correctly. You have to do the work to lose the weight. Same thing. We have to do the work to get out of racism. It is in our bones. It is in our systems, okay? Like my dad, I remember one time when I was like, I'll talk about my dad because he's passed away, and so like we just don't have to hold that against him, but my dad was born in rural Texas, okay? Highly racist person, okay? I remember one time we had a friend call us, and he was Black, and he was calling for my sister from our phone, or calling the house, and my dad was like, he sounded Black. And I was like, what does that even mean? I was just like, what does that even mean, Dad? Like, it didn't even like occur to me that like my dad would like pinpoint somebody's voice. Hold on, my dogs are fighting in the other room. Hey, let out. Okay, so it's in my blood, right? Like my dad literally put it in my blood, but I have to choose. It's no longer an option. It stops here. And we literally all have to choose. It stops here. And we're going to actively do everything we can to get out of it. It's the only way it's ever going to stop. It's the only way. Like what she said, can you imagine if Martin Luther King didn't have to dedicate his life to saying his life mattered? Imagine what he could have put his brains to, his knowledge to. But instead he had to dedicate and die for a cause that didn't even get fixed for, or even scratch the surface for another 70 years or 60 years or whatever that time frame is. Like, what have we been waiting for? What have we been dicking around for? Like, what are we waiting for? But it's because we didn't realize, or if you're like me, I didn't realize they needed me. Right? To me, in my mind, 5-10 years ago, I was like, man, that really sucks for them. Oof, gosh, I feel really bad for them. Right? But from a distance, like, I know you guys are over there, and I'm over here living my little white girl life. And I'm so sorry for your Black community and all the things that you have to deal with. It's just not an option anymore to say sorry for them. Okay? We have to actively engage. Okay? I'm not saying you need to be out there holding up signs. I'm not saying you need to be out there actively, protesting or rioting, but speaking up. Okay? When you see it. You see somebody share something they thought was funny on their social media, it's not funny. Right? It's not funny. And we have to be able to speak up But I think that it's easier to speak up the more I educate myself. Okay? That's what it comes down to for me. The more educated I am, the more I know, the more I understand, the easier it is for me to sit here and speak up. Had I not watched that documentary so perfectly yesterday, I wouldn't be here saying what I am right now. Okay? Because just even a few months ago, you guys, I didn't realize it was my problem. I didn't realize it was something I could affect. I didn't realize it was something that I could be involved in. I thought Black Lives Matter was like against white people when I first heard it. Like, I didn't know, because I didn't know. I didn't know what it meant. I was like, oh, like, is that like against me? Like Black Lives Matter? Like, I thought it was like, oh, like a movement, like the Black Panthers or something like that, in which I didn't even realize the Black Panthers weren't even bad guys. But they were portrayed as bad guys because they were empowered Black people. So what did the government do? Boom, suppress them, criminalize them, to keep them down, to keep them suppressed. When in reality, all they were trying to say is like, can you just care about us too? Can you just not be against us when I walk in the room? So, okay, I gotta pop over to these. Wait, I wanna read this.
So one thing at a former job that I was at, Girls on the Run, they were very, very passionate about being inclusive and making sure that our programming was getting to girls of all, different communities. But I learned a shit ton about bias when I was working there, and I had never even heard of implicit bias before, and that might be something that you ladies might want to look into if you're not familiar with it. But it is being, having an opinion about something and someone having a bias unconsciously. So I know, Jenny, when you were just kind of speaking about how like things that your dad would say growing up, I grew up in a very similar situation. And with all this stuff going on, I've had a lot of conversations with my friends lately of just like, shit, I was raised racist and I didn't even know it until I was like, until like 5 years ago, so it's like, I think it's just really, but the fact that I like to be vulnerable enough to even say that and be like, oh my God, like, I just didn't even know that was happening. But now that I know, it doesn't mean that I was bad. Like, it was the environment that I was raised in. So I recognize it. Now I'm going to change it, and I think that's some people come at it with an ego. How can I be wrong? This is how I was raised. This is what my family believes. This is, like, if I say that what I've practiced my whole life is wrong, like, being wrong is not good. And I think it's really helpful and important to stay in a growth mindset of just realizing that, like, we don't know everything and we're learning. And if you messed up in the past or did things in the past, it's okay as long as you learn and grow from them. But if you're going to continue to keep your blinders on, that's where the big problems are.
I think
I
one
love
thing
that.
too,
I like it. Okay, you said it's, hold on one second. Implicit bias, is that right?
Implicit bias.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to write it down before I forgot. Okay, Tessa, go ahead.
I think one thing too, like, I don't know, kind of, it's different for me. I don't, like, I see the struggles that they are. I have a lot of Native American in my, like, side of the family. But one thing, living in Upper, like, there's not a lot of different races, I would say, that live here. I mean, there are some that live here. But so for like my kids, when we go places and if they see a different race or they see Black people, I mean, we see Mexican, Spanish descent, that kind of stuff here. But if we go other places and they've not seen that, to them it's like, what? And I think that's kind of the thing that starts is, you know, a lot of times we've all grown up and we lived in the community. We didn't really go out. We didn't go places. And now with the world, you can go places a lot easier and, you know, stuff like that. And I think that's teaching our kids at a younger age that there are differences in cultures. There are differences among races, because if we went someplace, like for Jackson, we went to South Carolina last year, and that was like probably the first time that he was really introduced to somebody other than white. So he would like look and kind of stare, and I'm like, dude, and he would like say something. I'm like, yeah, I know, like it is. And that made me realize, like, I guess I thought that he seen it. You know, you see people on TV and you see this and that, but really making sure that you're introducing your kids into that if it's something other than, I mean, he's been introduced to like Native American things because my dad has really introduced all the kids into a lot of that kind of stuff. But outside of something like that, they've not really been introduced to it. And I think that's one thing that we need to make sure is that we are teaching our kids cultural differences and race differences. And like, they are people just like us. They are people just like us. Like their skin color may be different, but they are just like us. And like, and that was my thing is like, for me in my mind, we were at like a Walmart and he's like just staring at people. And I'm like, stop staring. Like, I didn't want to seem like we were racist because my kid was like, oh my God, there's a black person. I'm like, what have I not done to my kid? Like, but it wasn't, but just for him, it was a shock for him because he's not really been introduced into that, you know?
For sure. I think that is the one thing that I love about living where we're at now is like being down here, there's so much culture. I mean, we have a Cuban family that lives on the right of us, and I have a Jamaican family that lives on the left of us. And we talk and play with both of them like nothing. And so Derek goes out and plays basketball with our Jamaican, you know, neighbors, their son, like they play basketball. There's never been anything ever even said. You know, Derek's never been like, why is his skin different than mine? It's never even been said, you know, and he down here, I mean, I think the hardest thing for Derek sometimes is he'll run up to a kid at the park, and it's very common for kids to not speak English here. So they're either maybe visiting from another country or maybe they speak Spanish or something, and he'll go up and try to talk to him, and they like will look at him like, what are you saying? You know? And I'm like, oh, but we speak a different language. Let's see if we can figure it out. It's like, try hola. And just actually on the way home yesterday, he goes, bonjour. And I go, oh, you know French? Because he was watching Peppa Pig. And he goes, yeah, when you see somebody, you say bonjour. And I was like, exactly. And then we actually have some friends who, Josh and Genevieve, his wife, Genevieve's wife, is from Canada, and she speaks French. So I was telling him, I go, next time you see Genevieve, make sure you say bonjour, because she'll say it back to you. It's like she'll know what you're saying. You got to talk to her. That's how she speaks. And so I think you're right, Tessa, like getting them into that culture, like getting them in front of other people, getting them like really in the mix of other cultures, I think at a young age, even if it feels awkward as a mom to kind of be like, all right, go, you know, but really getting them kind of exposed to that culture or exposed to other cultures and making them realize that just because they may be different doesn't make them wrong or right. That's the biggest thing, I think. And that's what I'm realizing too, is like we as like a white society, we're like, when like, so say like, okay, so I worked in Carmel, Indiana, and some of you guys are from Indiana, so you know. Carmel, Indiana is the north side of Indianapolis, and it is predominantly white, okay? So when I would work there and there would be like a black family that would come in, it was like they had to mind their P's and Q's more than anybody else, right? Because we're like instantly placing judgment on them. And I just hated that aspect of it. And I was like, just because they may dress or look different than me, like, why does that make them wrong for being here? Like, Space is space. Why, how can I ever say that somebody can or cannot be here because they have different clothes on than me, or they speak a different language than me, or like I just didn't understand how we could say that. But it's a generational learned behavior, okay? That is because back in the day, you didn't vacation as much. You didn't explore as much. You stayed right in your little community. You really stayed in your little circles. And so anybody else was other, right? Like what she kind of said in the video, it's like there was us and them, right? Like your community and the other community. And so I think that when we just learn to travel and just the more places I've lived or the more places I've visited, the more I understand it and the less I'm really afraid of it too. You know, the more I've lived in cities, like I've lived in Indianapolis, I've lived in Houston, we go up to Miami all the time. The more I've been exposed to communities, like you guys driving, when Mike and I were on our way to West Palm Beach the other night, 95 was shut down and we had to drive through the ghetto, I guess what I would say, at 11 o'clock at night, right? And I was like, and then I looked at Mike, I go, this is why they are protesting on 95 though. And he goes, why? I go, so you're forced to drive through their community. You can't just jump on the highway and skip right on through them like you normally would. You have to go through their community to get where you want to go. I go, it's a statement. I go, oh, or at least if I was arranging that protest, that would be a statement in my mind. I'm going to force you to drive through my community. You can't jump on your highway and just skip right over us and pretend we don't exist anymore. That's what I took from it. They shut down 95, so you are forced to go through my community and see what we have to deal with and see what we live in. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I got from it. And it did expose a lot. Mike was like, wow. And like you guys, it was crazy though. It was like dead because they had the curfew going on. So like it was silent, like driving through there too. Like it was eerie, very eerie. So it was just interesting. I'm gonna pop over here again. Okay, also, I think it was Brooke. I was reading something. Dude, that whole thing about your husband, like, what the fuck? That's so crazy. That's so crazy that people even are like, oh, I didn't realize you were black. Like, what does that have anything to do with it? Why would you even feel the need to say that? You know, like, but that's a learned behavior that we've been in, you know? Go ahead, Brooke.
And like now that he's doing customer service from home, like I hear it. Like I hear just how his voice changes from when he's talking to me versus when he answers the phone to do his job. And it's so ridiculous. Like, I don't know. I don't know how he does it every day. I mean, and Alicia, what you said about, you know, the small towns, I agree with you. I don't know necessarily that there's racism specifically in the small towns. We live in Cary right now. We lived in Van Loo before. I mean, it doesn't really get very much smaller than that. And like, he jokes about being the only black guy that lives there and stuff like that. But I know it bothers him. But what do? You know?
And I bet it would even be harder right now because it's all being exposed, that it's like, he's probably just trying to go on about his day-to-day too a little bit because he's got a family and a job and trying to kind of keep that all afloat. But then there's like all this, like, now I bet everybody's looking at him like, oh, are you going to start rioting? You know what I mean? Like, you know, people think that crap, or like people are like, that's what we need to change, is that behind the scenes thinking about because somebody's skin is a certain color that they're going to start doing a certain thing. I hate that. Becky, I think you wanted to talk too. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to wait my turn. I know everybody wants to share some experiences because it's really prevalent. But I've had kind of an awakening And like you touched on it in the beginning of the call, I'm not racist. Like I'm not racist, and I can declare that. But we're at the time in our lives where that's not enough. I have a bad example, but it's an example that I want to share. So when the babies were younger, anytime we'd go out as a family and, you know, you have to take the kids into the restroom to change them, it was always me having to take them because the changing tables were in the women's restrooms, right? Again, not the best example, but I want to share that when I got home after a couple of like family trips, and that was like, oh, that's annoying. Like I always have to do it. Like I want my husband to take the kids in there and change their diaper. Why aren't there changing tables in men's restrooms? And so since that affected me, I started sharing shit all over Facebook. Let's get changing tables in men's restrooms. Let's do this. Like, come on, what are we thinking? It's 2020, right? So then I had an awakening, like, here I sit saying, I'm not racist. I know people who are racist. I'm not one of them. I'm not part of the problem. I'm fine. But no, like it takes me, people like me, actively speaking out against what Black people go through, or what dads go through, again, a bad comparison, but what dads go through when they need to change their kid's diaper and there's no changing table in there. It's not equal, it's not fair. And it's not enough to just sit back because it didn't affect me before. Like I saw the news and I saw, well, maybe he shouldn't have resisted that arrest. And, you know, I'm sitting back here in my own little anti-racist world thinking these things, but I'm not saying anything about it or doing anything about it until it affects me. And that's where we need to change. You know, white people need to speak up. So thanks for letting me share.
Absolutely. Whew. I love that. It's so true though. Like I didn't realize I needed to speak up. I really didn't. It never occurred to me. No one had said, hey, actually, if you maybe spoke up, maybe we could get some progress. I always thought actually if I spoke up, they were going to be mad. Like, oh, what is this white girl talking about? She doesn't know what she's talking about, you know? And so like, I always kind of reclused about it, even though I was educating myself and understanding it. And I felt like I did not have racism in my bones, you know, but I wasn't actively anti-racism. And that's really what we're starting to be exposed to now, right? And you guys, I will tell you, it's okay to have not been before. It's okay to have known, not, like I didn't know the word systematic racism before a few weeks ago. I didn't know what the heck that meant. But instead of just saying, oh, that doesn't exist, whatever, you guys are just making up terms. Like instead of doing that, I said, let me research this. What is this? I need to know more about this. Who can I reach out to that maybe can help me educate myself about this? So I reached out to a few people I knew. I watched a documentary. I did some Googling. I did some research and I went, oh shit. Oops. Okay, I need to actively make this known. Okay. And I don't know, it's hard, you guys. It's gonna be a long journey, right? But we have to be the game changers, okay? Or else this is gonna continue. And I'm over it. Like I'm serious, I'm over it. I'm so over Black communities being scared of calling the police for help because they think they're gonna get arrested or die. Like that's not okay. Right? Like I would think that we would all agree with that. And so for it to change, we have to actively speak up. I look at it, so I'm, some of you know, so I come from a women's studies background. So that's what I got my, I majored in communications and women and gender studies. So I may not focus in racism, but my whole like college career was based off of gender inequality and women inequality and transgender and all that stuff. So I know a lot about women inequality. So I know a lot about like the 1920s and the whole women's rights. Like I've done more in women's rights, but now I'm just using that knowledge to apply it to the Black community. I know what the women had to do to get, like, you guys, I've posted about it before if you guys kind of watched a couple of weeks ago, because there were women that actively starved themselves in jail as a literally like as a protest. That was their way of protesting. So they were protesting at the White House. They were arrested and put into jail, and they decided to actively starve themselves to continue getting radical. It was considered radical. It was like, oh my God, these women are choosing not to eat just so they can vote. It's so radical. How dare they? They used to tie these women down to chairs, their ankles and arms, and force a tube down their throat and force them to eat. They used to force these women to eat to try to make them live so they wouldn't die in jail under their radical protest. But these women felt that it was necessary for them to put their entire bodies at risk, their entire lives at risk, to make momentum for the women, for like all mankind, for all of the rest of the world. They were willing to sacrifice themselves for the rest of women in their lives. So when we look at things like rioting or radical protesting, and we look at it and go, what the heck are they doing? Sometimes it's the only way to get attention. It's sometimes being radical is the only way people are going to snap out of it and pay attention. Okay? So sometimes we just have to look at it from a different angle of going, wow, like a child. What, like when Derek's like acting out, I'm like, okay, I get it. You need my attention. What is it you need? Right? Because you're trying to get my attention over there, and you're doing something that you know is going to make me upset to get my attention. I think of it like a child. They're trying to get our attention. And we have to be the mom and say, okay, I see you. What do you need? How can I help? Okay? How can I support you? How can I set you up? What can I do? Right? And if we keep ignoring it, what does the child do? It gets worse and worse and worse and worse. We cannot ignore it anymore. We just can't. And being silent is no longer an option either. And that's what I'm learning. That's what I'm learning right now. Because I would say I'm not racist, but I wasn't actively fighting people that were. Okay? I wasn't actively shutting down people that were sharing memes about it. Right? Like the way Mike kind of explains it, he goes, no one's laughing at Timmy's jokes at Christmas anymore. You know, like like when you'd be like at Christmas and like so-and-so is like telling inappropriate jokes and you're kind of like, haha, and you chuckle at it. No one's doing that anymore. It's not funny anymore. It's not a joke anymore. Okay? And so we have to actively fight against it. And I think that we're smart enough to do it. You know, we have the education now to know what we need to do. We just maybe need the community a little bit to say like, okay, we're all in this together and we can all actively do this. Because it's hard to step out by myself. It's hard for you to want to step out by yourself. But if you say, you know what though, we're all doing it. We're all in this together and we're going to actively fight this. Then you can know that maybe, okay, well, it's not that I'm speaking up about it, but so is my other coach, Elika, and so is my other coach, so-and-so, and da-da-da. You know what I mean? You can say like, hey, actively as a team, we're fighting against this because it's no longer an option. Because I want, I have my friend Nicole has actively wanted to be in my challenge group for I don't know how long, years. And I wonder if maybe she hasn't because she doesn't see anybody like her in our group. I don't know. I don't know. But maybe I need to actively fight against that. Maybe I need to ask her, hey, I would love for you to come onto our team and maybe teach us or educate us or create that culture for us. We need it. We want it. But maybe I have to actively invite that from that level for her to understand that we really would accept her just like anybody else. I don't know. But it's something I'm going to look into as soon as I get off this call. I'm going to message her, right? Maybe she's stopping from joining here because she doesn't see somebody like her. But if I just let her know, maybe you could be my leader in that, right? Like maybe I need you to step up with me side by side and we actively lead and lead by example. And maybe she can come arm in arm with us and lift us up in that direction. I don't know. But how cool would that be? So, yeah, see, Carrie, I just read your comment. You never know, because you maybe didn't see somebody like you in here, which I totally understand, and I don't blame you, right? Like, you were like, oh, I don't know, these girls, like little white girls from these small towns, like, I don't blame you for wanting to be like, I don't know if that's my jam. But maybe if we create this space of love, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you're at, and we just want to support you for you, maybe we can start creating a more diverse community and have those experiences from different people that can come into our mix, and we can learn about different cultures just because we added somebody in here through our health journey, right? Like, Carrie, I want to know more about you and your Native American background because we don't have that here, you know? And I love that. I actually love that. Like, I think that, like, the more different we are, the better. I don't want you guys to look like me. I don't want you guys acting like me. I want you to be you and bring all your goodness into this circle as well. But as you, not you trying to play me or you trying to play your coach, you as you. I don't know. And if there's something I can do different to help that, please let me know. If there's something I'm not exposed to yet that I haven't quite seen or done that could maybe help bring that in, girl, I'm in a growth mindset right now. I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to learn. And I hope you guys are too. Because I know a lot of you guys are teachers and you understand that, like, we are never a final product. We have to continue learning. Our society is changing. Our communities are changing. Everything is changing. And if we're not changing with it, we're going to get left behind. And I would rather be the forefront of the change than the lagger trying to hold on to the past. Okay? If there's anything you can tell yourself right now is that your world has changed, your community has changed, your life has changed, and you need to accept that right now. You no longer live in the world you did 6 months ago. Accept it. Bottom line. You better either jump on the freaking bandwagon or you are about to get left behind. And you're going to feel real stupid for getting left behind. Let's just be honest. I don't even like to use that word, but for real. You got to get on board and actively on board. Not just like, okay, I'll sit here and mind my P's and Q's. No. Time to speak up. Even if you've never spoke up before. And maybe it's just to, like, your father-in-law who thinks that it's funny to make jokes on Sunday evening. And you say, hey, I really appreciate if you just wouldn't tell those jokes when I'm here. I really appreciate it if you just wouldn't say those anymore. Maybe it's just speaking up right there. Maybe you're not putting posts out on social media and actively holding signs at the protest, but you're starting small within your family on the jokes on Sunday evening. Okay? Actively doesn't mean that you have to be in the front line of the protest. Actively means when you see it, you stop it. Okay? So, whew, I don't know more. Yeah, ooh, I don't know more. I love that. Let me start a piece of it. I love that. It needs to change, you guys, for sure. Yeah, Carrie, by the way, I need to buy some of those earrings as well. You sold the ones that I liked. I didn't even get to tell you I liked them. They were already sold. I was literally going to comment on it, and you were like, sold. And I was like, so I'm going to have to tell you which ones they were and show you so you can make me them again. sorry, you guys. For real, though, I was pretty nervous about talking about this topic when I saw it last night. I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. Like, even getting onto the call this morning, I avoided it literally up until 8 o'clock. Not avoided it, but, like, I was just, like, sitting here. I was like, oh, my God, it's 8 o'clock. I got to start this Zoom. I know what we're talking about today. Like, but I was just mentally stirring. I was just mentally, like, gear turning, you know? Because I'm like, I don't want to offend anybody. But then I'm like, getting offended. We have to get offended. We're going to be offended. If you're offended, good. That means that you're feeling something, right? Like, I was offended every once in a while. It's because I have guilt. I have guilt for my own race against another race. I have guilt in my bones, and that's why I get defensive, right? And so if we could just let our egos down. Ooh, buddy, let's tie it into 2 weeks ago. Let your ego down and be willing to step up into learning. Okay? Let your pride down. Let your ego down and say, you know what? I'm just going to step up into a growth mindset. Instead of thinking I know everything or thinking that systematic racism doesn't exist, why don't I research it? Why don't I delve into it a little bit? Because I might actually learn something. My dad always used to say, he'd go, if you'd shut up long enough, you might accidentally learn something. He'd always tell me that because I'd never shut up. I just keep talking. But he would always tell me, because if you shut your mouth long enough, you might accidentally learn something. And so I just kind of feel like maybe if we just shut our mouths long enough too, we might actually learn something. And it is something, you guys, we have got to learn. Because I'm over it, right? We're over it. We're over racism existing. But again, the only way to get through it, or the only way to get over it, is through it. We have to work through it. We have to acknowledge it. Literally acknowledge it. That's what I'm going to end on, you guys. I tell Mike all the time, I go, if we would just acknowledge it as a white race, we would just say, you know what, you're right. We did do that. And it was wrong. So let's see what we can do to fix it now. Like, literally, that's what they're asking for, is that we just acknowledge all the shit we did for all these years. Just acknowledge it. Just say, okay, you're right. You're right. That was, like, really bad. We allowed that happen for way too long. I'm really sorry. Now let's fix it. Now let's actively work in the opposite direction. Just acknowledge it. Right? And when you see somebody try to degrade it or to not acknowledge it, to say, oh, that doesn't exist, stop them and say, it does exist. Maybe you need to educate yourself because you're sounding very ignorant. Right? That's what I always feel like when somebody's like, it doesn't exist, or that's all made up, or, oh, the riots are unbelievable. I'm like, you sound very ignorant because you don't even understand what it's about. You don't even realize what's going on. Because you're so blinded by your own thoughts, and you won't even step out of your own brain for a second and just view from their side for a second and just try to understand what they're going through. Sounds ignorant. Okay? It's not a question as to whether it exists. Okay? What we need to do now is actively work how we can get rid of it. Okay? It's not a question on whether it exists. That's not the argument anymore. We know it exists. And if you didn't know, you know now. Okay? So it's our job, it's your job to actively move in the wrong direction. Because if not, that moving elevator, that moving, what did she call it, escalator, or that moving sidewalk, that's what she called it. Moving sidewalk is going to take you. It's just going to keep taking you. And we, maybe as white women, may not be too affected by it. But are you okay with other people continuously living in it? Because I'm not. That's unfair. I'm not okay with that. And I hope you guys aren't either. I hope you're not okay with somebody getting their like literally dying because they had the knee on the back of their head for 8 minutes. That's not okay. Regardless of what he did. Regardless of what he did, that guy didn't deserve to die. Even if he had drugs on him, was speeding, or was peeping in someone's window, I don't know. He didn't deserve to die at the hands of somebody who we think is supposed to protect us. That's the bottom line. And that's the issue. Okay? Woo! All right. That's a lot for today. I know. But it's so necessary, you guys. Oh, Becky, I'm so glad that you guys like this. I was like really nervous about talking about this today. But I'm learning, and I want you guys to learn right along with me. And if maybe we can learn together, then maybe we can make a movement, or at least maybe make a difference in our own little societies. I don't know. Okay. So I appreciate you ladies so much for speaking up. Thank you guys so much for being here and listening to it as well. I know it's not easy. I know it's not fun, right? It's not fun to sit here and be like, oh, so we as a white race are POSs, right? Like, that's kind of how I feel. But we can actively, once we acknowledge it, okay, then we can actively start to fix it. And that's all that needs to happen. We just need to acknowledge it and actively start moving in the other direction. That's it, guys. It's not something to like blame yourselves or beat yourselves up over. Just say, oh, wow, I didn't realize. It's like Mike was kind of like, oh man, you're all like, oh, love, right? And I was like, well, I'm not gonna lie, I was exposed to me that it is my problem. Before, I didn't know. I didn't realize it was. But now that it is, boom, I'm right there. I was exposed that I have to be active for this to go away. Boom, I'm right there then. I have no problem with change, especially when I know the growth is going to make me a better person. Don't fight it. Get your ego out of the way. Get your pride out of the way and say, this is exactly the direction we need to go. Okay, because the only reason you would be fighting it is because it's your ego. Oh, well, it doesn't happen here, or it's not in my family. And that's ego. Push it to the side and say, it's an issue. I need to actively work towards fixing it. Okay. All right, ladies. Woo! Love you girls so much. Thank you guys for having this conversation. Hopefully, maybe it opens up the mind just a little bit. Okay. Definitely watch this documentary on Netflix. I'm going to maybe share it, share like the trailer or something like that in the challenge group. But you guys, it educated me so much. You trust me. Oh, I love you guys. We're moving in the right direction. I can feel it always, you guys. If it's hard, if it feels icky, you guys know we're moving in the right direction, because that's where all the work needs to happen. When it feels icky, when it's hard, when it feels like you want to run and hide and not talk about it anymore or not do it, you're moving in the right direction. Keep going, okay? Keep going. All right? We're going to change the world. All right, ladies, I'm going to head out. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Tomorrow, I can't guarantee we're going to continue on the topic. I have some other stuff I've been wanting to share, so but I'll let you guys know. All right, have a great day. Thank you all. Happy Monday. Bye.